Russia's unprovoked aggression against Ukraine has been ongoing for 4 years, minus 3 days.
And we really need to begin today with that exact calibration. What we are doing here is not your standard geopolitical overview.
Right.
We are continuing a forensic audit of the internal functioning of Putin's Russia.
And for those of you joining us again in the Deep Dive Hub, you know our methodology. We aren't looking at troop movements today. We aren't looking at statements from the UN or, lines on a map.
We are looking at the machine.
Exactly. We are analyzing the war as a financial mechanism.
And we have to maintain that strict discipline of language we established previously. We don't use state euphemisms here. We don't use phrases that the regime uses to soften the reality.
And demand forensic clarity.
We do, because the system we are analyzing today, it relies entirely on fog. It relies on bureaucratic ambiguity to hide its gears. So today, we're going to strip away that fog and look directly at the ledger.
To do that effectively, though, we need to bridge the gap for anyone who might have missed our earlier investigations, especially the one into Regiment 1435.
That is vital context. You really cannot understand today's topic without understanding concepts like the tariff and zeroing out.
Let's refresh that quickly for the listener. The tariff, this was the system we uncovered where the command structure essentially monetizes the breathing soldier.
Right. Our previous Deep Dive Hub episodes showed that safety, simply avoiding what they call the meat assaults, is effectively a subscription service.
It's extortion.
It is pure extortion. It's not about military tactics at all. You are a soldier on the front line, and you pay your commander a monthly fee. If you pay, you sit in the rear, you dig trenches, you survive.
And if the payment stops?
If the payment stops, you are zeroed out. You are sent to die. It established a baseline for us. The living soldier is an asset to be milked.
And then we had the testimony of Oleg Miller. He introduced us to the concept of hot pies and the medical bazaar.
Yes, Miller showed us the actual intake process. New recruits aren't seen as reinforcements by their commanders. They are seen as walking revenue streams. They are stripped of their signing bonuses immediately upon arrival.
Even the wounded.
Even the wounded. Men missing limbs are extorted for their state injury payouts. The commanders take a cut of the compensation simply for processing the paperwork for the wound.
So we have established a very clear precedent here. The machine extracts financial value from the soldier while he is breathing. He is a battery to be drained.
But today we are moving to the next stage of extraction.
What happens after the soldier dies?
The terminal stage. The previous episodes established how the living soldier is monetized. Today, relying heavily on the material from Jan Matveev from the YouTube channel Popular Politics, we are going to analyze the monetization of the dead soldier.
This is the economics of death.
That is our core thesis today. Inside Putin's Russia, this war is sustained primarily through financial incentives. But here is the structural turn we need to examine. When the state assigns a fixed and significant payout to a human death, and we're talking millions of rubles here, death becomes economically meaningful inside the system.
It becomes an asset.
It becomes a financial asset, a commodity. And like any commodity in an unregulated space, it could be traded, it could be stolen, it could be harvested, and as we will see, it can be manufactured.
The material from Jan Matveev from the YouTube channel Popular Politics is, it's heavy. He calls this phenomenon the Black Widows of War.
It is a dark evolution of the system.
It fundamentally changes how you look at the social support for Russia's unprovoked aggression against Ukraine. It stops being a question of politics and starts being a question of accounting.
It completely dismantles the myth of ideological support. But to really understand this Black Widow market, because it operates exactly like a market, we have to zoom out first.
We need to look at the initial phase of the invasion.
Exactly. We have to go back to February 2022 to understand why this massive amount of money is sloshing around in the first place.
Jan Matveev makes a point to contrast the original plan, the failed blitzkrieg, with the long war we see now.
We have to remember the mindset of that initial push. The expectation was a 3 to 10 day operation. You had riot police packing their dress uniforms. They were genuinely expecting parades in Kiev.
A quick regime change and then they go home.
Right. And for the Russian public, it was designed to be a television show, a spectator sport. You sit on your couch, you watch the military might of the state, you feel a sense of imperial pride, and you don't have to sacrifice anything personally.
But the blitzkrieg failed.
It failed catastrophically. The parades never happened. And suddenly, the regime was looking at a years-long war of attrition.
And a war of attrition requires constant manpower.
Massive, continuous inputs of manpower. You simply cannot fight that kind of war with a small professional army. You need bodies. And this is exactly where the motivation shift happens.
Jan Matveev argues that the ideological messaging completely failed.
It did. The abstract ideas, patriotism, the so-called denazification, the supposed threat of NATO, it all failed to generate sufficient volunteers. It wasn't enough to get a man from a factory town in the Urals to voluntarily go and die in a trench.
The survival instinct overrode the propaganda.
Exactly. So the state had to pivot. And they turned to what Jan Matveev calls the main skrepa.
We should define that for you, the listener. Skrepa. It's a very specific Russian political term.
It translates roughly to a spiritual staple or a binding force. It's a word the Kremlin uses to describe what holds the nation together, usually referring to traditional values or historical memory.
But Jan Matveev points out that the real binding force holding this war effort together isn't spiritual at all.
No. The main skrepa is poverty.
Poverty as a structural weapon.
It's the reality of the Russian regions. Jan Matveev asserts that 99.9% of participants are motivated by money, not patriotism. To keep the ranks full, the state unleashed a massive financial injection.
We started seeing regional races for signing bonuses.
Yes, the regions began competing with each other to meet quotas. Sign a contract in one region, you get 1 million rubles. Sign in another, you get 1.5 million. It climbed to 2 million rubles just for signing the paper.
And for context, we need to understand what 2 million rubles means in these specific areas.
It is astronomical. In many of these depressed regions, an average monthly salary might be 30 or 40,000 rubles. A 2 million ruble bonus is years of income, handed over upfront.
Plus the promise of debt relief.
Debt relief, suspended criminal sentences. And then the final piece of the financial architecture, the coffin money.
The grobovi.
Right. The state placed a fixed price tag on a dead soldier, a price that, for many families in these regions, represents more money than they could possibly earn in a lifetime of honest labor. The death economy is born right there.
Jan Matveev brings up the example of the Lada. And I know many people listening have seen the memes online, the dark jokes about parents buying a white Lada with their son's death money.
It has become a dark internet joke, yes.
But Jan Matveev insists we need to look at it as a serious economic indicator.
Because it is one. Jan Matveev highlights a report broadcast on Russian state television. This wasn't a hidden camera or a leak. This was prime-time propaganda. They proudly displayed parents who bought a brand new Lada with the state benefits from their son's death.
They framed it as a civic success story.
They interview the father, and he essentially says, "Our son died fighting, and in his memory, we have purchased this vehicle."
It's the absolute normalization of the trade.
It is the state normalizing the exchange of a human life for a consumer good. When you broadcast that on federal television, you are sending a very clear signal to the entire population. You are validating the transaction.
You are telling them that a dead relative is a financial windfall.
And once a transaction is validated by the state, people start doing the math. The market responds to the incentive.
Which brings us to the core of Jan Matveev's investigation. The Black Widow phenomenon.
This is a forensic breakdown of a predictable fraud market.
And we need to be clear here. We are not talking about grieving wives navigating a bureaucracy.
Not at all. Jan Matveev is describing an organized fraud market where the institution of marriage is simply the administrative mechanism used to capture state funds.
It's a heist.
It is a heist, and it is facilitated by a specific bureaucratic loophole, the fast track.
Explain how the fast track works.
Normally, getting married in Russia involves a mandatory waiting period. It takes time. But Jan Matveev explains that military status allows for an immediate marriage. There is no waiting period.
You just show up?
You walk into the registry office, you show your military contract or mobilization papers, and you are married that exact same day, often hours before the man is deployed.
This removal of bureaucratic friction is what makes the fraud scalable.
Exactly. It removes the cooling-off period where a victim might realize what is actually happening to him.
Let's unpack the specific regional examples explicitly mentioned by Jan Matveev, because they show the sheer variety and organization of this predation. Let's start with the Kurgan region.
Yes, the city of Shumiha. This is what we can call the organized partnership model.
It reads like a thriller. You have a woman and her ex-husband working together.
They are legally divorced, but they are operating as a unified criminal enterprise. They identify a target in their town, a vulnerable worker.
Someone isolated.
Someone isolated, maybe with a drinking problem. Someone without a protective social network.
So they aren't targeting an existing soldier. They are targeting a civilian.
That is the crucial distinction.
Yeah.
They are manufacturing the asset from scratch. They coerce this vulnerable man into a fictitious marriage with the ex-wife.
And then
And then once the marriage certificate is signed, they coerce him into signing a contract with the military.
they manufacture the husband, and then they manufacture the soldier.
And then they wait for the manufacture of the corpse. The ex-spouses split his salary while he's alive because the new wife now controls the bank card. And the ultimate goal is to split the millions in coffin money when he is killed.
Jan Matveev points out that this is essentially human trafficking.
It is human trafficking structured entirely around state war bonuses. The victim is just raw material. The marriage certificate is the extraction tool. They have turned Russia's unprovoked aggression against Ukraine into a private business opportunity.
The second case study. This one is from the Primory region, and I found this one particularly grim. This involves targeting an orphan.
This is the case of Ensign Alexander Polachuk and his wife. And their target was a young man named Dmitry Vipritsky.
Tell us why Dmitry was chosen.
Dmitry was the perfect economic victim for this specific system. Jan Matveev details that Dmitry was an orphan, raised entirely in state institutions. Now, if you are a predator looking to capture death benefits, an orphan is the ultimate prize.
Because there are no parents to split the money with.
Exactly. Under the rules of compensation, the payout goes to the spouse and the parents. If there are no parents, the spouse receives 100% of the funds. There is no mother to contest the will, no father to ask questions at the funeral.
So how did Ensign Polachuk execute the trap?
Polachuk was an officer, which gave him authority and leverage. He lured Dmitry with promises of safety. He promised him rearguard duty.
He told him he wouldn't see the front line.
He said, sign the contract, stay with me, and I will keep you safe.
Which is the exact same lie we saw commanders using in our previous Deep Dive Hub episodes about the tariff.
The exact same mechanism of false safety. But before Dmitry deploys, Polachuk arranges a fast-track marriage. He marries Dmitry off to a female accomplice.
A friend of Polachuk's wife.
Yes. Dmitry, who is used to institutional compliance and relying on authority figures, is manipulated into agreeing. The new wife immediately uses Dmitry's orphan status to extract a state housing certificate.
So she starts cashing out his living benefits immediately.
Immediately. They take a salary, they take the housing certificate. But the true intent, as Jan Matveev's analysis demonstrates, was always the death benefit. They were simply waiting for the 8 million rubles.
And Jan Matveev includes a detail about the biological mother that just shows the absolute forensic coldness of this operation.
It is staggering. Dmitry's biological mother had lost her parental rights many years prior, which is why he was in the orphanage system. But the new wife actually went to court to obtain a certified copy of the order proving the mother's rights were terminated.
While Dmitry was still alive.
While he was alive and serving, she was doing the legal prep work for his death. She wanted to ensure that when the payout came, the biological mother couldn't suddenly appear and claim half. She was securing her 100% yield.
It's cold-blooded estate planning for a casualty you're facilitating.
And remember, Polachuk is the officer. He has the power to assign Dmitry to the most dangerous assault groups to expedite that casualty.
Let's move to the third example Jan Matveev provides, the case from the Samara region. He calls this one a speed run.
The case of Ildar Gabasov. The timeline here shows how incredibly fast this machine can consume a human being.
Walk us through the days.
Day 1. Ildar arrives in Samara. On that exact same day, his mother dies suddenly.
He is completely unmoored.
He is grieving, isolated, in shock. He is highly vulnerable. Day 2. A woman takes him to the registry office, and they are married via the fast track.
And day 3?
Day 3, he signs the military contract and is deployed.
3 days from arrival to marriage to deployment.
Yeah, the inevitable result. He dies shortly after, and the wife claims the millions. But Jan Matveev highlights a crucial detail about this specific woman. She is a recidivist.
She has done this before.
She's a serial widow.
Yeah.
She previously executed the exact same scheme with another soldier. She realized that with the fast-track marriage loophole and the extremely high casualty rates at the front, she could build a scalable business model.
A production line of dead husbands.
She just churns through them to collect the payouts.
The final case Jan Matveev details is from St. Petersburg, the paperwork trap. This one shows how even a past administrative decision can be weaponized.
This is the story of a soldier named Alexei. Alexei is killed at the front. His sister, his actual blood relative, applies for the state benefits.
And she hits a wall.
She goes to the office expecting the payout, and the state informs her that the millions have already been dispersed to Alexei's wife.
But the sister had no idea he was married.
Because it wasn't a real marriage. Yan Matveev explains that back in 2020, Alexei had entered into a fictitious marriage with a foreign national, likely a woman from Central Asia who simply needed citizenship or legal registration in St. Petersburg.
A completely administrative arrangement.
A paper marriage. They probably hadn't spoken or seen each other in years. The woman was living with another man, raising children with another man. But when Russia's unprovoked aggression against Ukraine began and Alexei was deployed, she realized the paper she held was suddenly worth millions.
She just waited.
She stayed completely quiet. And when the death notification entered the state system, she quietly used that valid marriage certificate to claim the entire payout before the sister even knew what was happening.
In this specific case, the sister actually fought back in court and proves the marriage was fictitious, right?
She did. But Yan Matveev asks the critical structural question. How many cases exist where the family doesn't have the resources to fight in court? Or where there is no sister to notice the theft? This is an invisible market.
We're looking at human trafficking, the targeting of orphans, serial widows, and the exploitation of paperwork. This isn't just a collection of tragic anecdotes.
It is economic behavior within a war economy. When the state says, we will pay millions for a dead man, the market innovates ways to produce dead men and intercept the payment.
I want to pivot our focus now to the Western listener, because when we outline this death economy, it can feel entirely alien to someone sitting in a liberal democracy.
This is a vital transition, because there's a widespread belief in the West, a projection, really, that we need to address carefully.
We hear it constantly in Western analysis, the assumption that the Russian populace is driven by deep ideological indoctrination.
The belief that they are fighting for imperial ambition or a hatred of the West. Yan Matveev's material calmly demonstrates that this is a myth.
Financial motivation is the central pillar.
The entire system is structured around money. Participation is incentivized materially, not ideologically.
But we have to explain the structural concept here. It goes beyond just needing a paycheck. We need to talk about material entanglement.
Inside Putin's Russia, once a person accepts money connected to participation in this war, that person is no longer neutral.
Explain the mechanics of that entanglement.
Taking the signing bonus makes you an employee of the aggression. You have signed a contract to deliver violence. Accepting the coffin money makes the family a direct beneficiary of the aggression.
Their financial stability is now permanently tied to the war.
Exactly. Their paid-off mortgage, their new car, their renovated apartment, it is all funded by Russia's unprovoked aggression against Ukraine.
And this creates a specific psychological lock.
In a liberal democracy, your economic participation, buying groceries, paying rent, is generally morally neutral. But inside this system, financial participation in the war functions as a binding mechanism.
It creates loyalty through complicity.
You cannot publicly condemn the regime that just bought your house. You cannot protest the war without admitting that your newfound wealth is blood money. The psychological defense mechanism forces them to embrace the state's narrative.
This is how the system ensures silence.
It buys it. It turns the population into stakeholders in a violent enterprise.
It's the exact same machine we analyzed in our previous Deep Dive Hub episodes, just at a different stage of extraction. Earlier, we saw how living soldiers are monetized. Now Yan Matveev shows us how dead soldiers are monetized.
But the mechanism isn't always purely financial incentive. Sometimes the system uses coercion to force people into the payment chain. Yan Matveev explicitly details the Chechen variation.
Let's look at that, because the dynamic in Chechnya, specifically regarding the Akhmat battalions, operates on a different axis of vulnerability.
The recruitment quotas still exist, but the message shifts from the promise of wealth to the threat of destruction. Yan Matveev describes the honey trap method.
This is state-sponsored entrapment via social media.
Yes. A man is contacted by a woman on Instagram or another platform. They exchange messages. Perhaps they agree to meet.
And then the trap springs.
The man is detained by Kirovites, the regional security forces.
Under what accusation?
Usually something related to dishonoring a married woman or a similar moral transgression against local traditions. In that specific cultural context, this is a devastating accusation.
It's leverage.
It is absolute leverage. The authorities present him with a choice. He can go to prison, he can face torture, and the reality of torture in Chechnya is well documented, or he can face public shaming, which destroys his family's standing. Or he can sign a military contract. He can join the Akhmat battalion, go to the front, and his supposed crime is forgiven. The file disappears.
Jan Matveev notes a particularly horrifying detail about the women used in these honey traps.
They are not willing participants. Jan Matveev explicitly states that underage girls are used as bait, and they are coerced by torture to entrap these men.
So the system tortures a victim to entrap another victim to generate a soldier for the front.
It is a cascade of coercion, but the final output is the same as the financial fraud in Kurgan. A body in a uniform injected into the war.
Let's look at the downstream effects of this war economy. Because when you pump this much blood money into a society, it doesn't just sit quietly in bank accounts.
It creates systemic outputs. Jan Matveev details what he calls last-day spending.
We saw glimpses of this with the 30,000 ruble hot pies in our previous Deep Dive Hub episodes. The soldiers have cash, and they know they might die tomorrow.
So they spend it with a kind of desperate velocity. Jan Matveev points to a massive increase in alcohol consumption. The money is poured into binge drinking.
And it fuels exploitation around the soldiers.
Specifically the escort market. Jan Matveev highlights a massive expansion of prostitution in the frontline areas and occupied regions.
And this is incredibly dangerous for the women involved.
It is a zone of extreme peril. You have a concentration of traumatized, heavily armed men with large amounts of cash and a sense of total impunity. It leads to severe violence, rape, and murder.
The violence of the front line bleeds backward into the civilian areas.
And eventually it bleeds all the way back home to the Russian regions. Jan Matveev connects this economic cycle directly to domestic violence.
The violence returns with the survivors.
And they return to a society where domestic violence has been largely decriminalized. Jan Matveev uses a clip from Solovyov Live, the prominent state propaganda broadcast, to illustrate the state's official stance on this.
What is the message in the clip?
The propagandist is explicitly telling Russian women that they must tolerate abuse from returning soldiers. The message is that the veteran is a hero, he has endured things you cannot understand, and therefore his violence against his wife must be accepted.
It is absolute impunity granted by the state.
The state is protecting its primary asset, the violent male willing to fight at the direct expense of the women. The state demands complicity even in domestic abuse.
I want to pause here and clarify something for our Western audiences, because there is a cognitive dissonance when looking at Russia today.
Yes, the dual reality.
People see footage of modern Moscow. They see clean streets, open cafes, normal metropolitan life, and they think, how does this coexist with the horrific death economy we are describing?
It is crucial to understand that these realities do not contradict each other. They depend on each other.
The real Russia of this war is not the postcard, it is the payment chain.
Exactly. The clean streets of Moscow are shielded from mobilization specifically because the death economy is functioning perfectly in the impoverished regions. The Black Widow in the Urals claiming her millions is the mechanism that allows the capital to remain untouched. They are two halves of the exact same machine.
And that machine is entirely transactional. It extracts life and converts it into state power and private wealth.
From the commanders charging a tariff for a soldier's right to live, to the organized rings manufacturing marriages to harvest the compensation for his death.
In Putin's Russia, this war is structured through payments as much as through weapons.
When a state turns death into compensation, it creates incentives around death.
When people accept money tied to an unprovoked war, they become part of the mechanism.
And the mechanism does not forget who has been paid.
We have spent a long time today looking at the forensic ledger of this system. It is a society that has monetized its own destruction.
It is a dark equilibrium.
I want to leave you, the listener, with one final thought to explore on your own. We have seen how this money binds the population to the aggression today. But what happens to the internal stability of this machine when the state can no longer afford the payments, yet millions of traumatized men remain accustomed to the price of violence?
It is a ledger that will eventually have to be balanced.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. Goodbye.